I'm gonna preface this by answering a question I ask myself from time to time. Not all shit show races are bad. We remember and revere the F1 races like the 2017 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, the 2019 German Grand Prix, and hell, even going back a bit further, the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. Jumping over here to the stateside races, we love the races at Daytona and Talladega and NASCAR because they're just batshit crazy races. Going over to IndyCar, the races at Texas before the reconfiguration always pop into our head. These races pop into our head because there's always something memorable about them. They're all crazy races, and because of the fact that they're crazy races, there's always something there in our minds that brings us back to these races. And in some cases, we remember these races just by the way they finished. You're not going to look at a race that had backmarker team finish on the podium just say, oh, that's just a normal race. However, I direct you back to the beginning when I said not all shit show races are bad races. Some of them can be really fucking bad as well. Some of these races could be like watching a B-rated movie from the 70s, 80s, or 90s. It's just so bad, you can't help but laugh. You know, there's this channel I watch called Retro TV that airs these B-rated movies, TV shows, and all that shit. It's shit that you'd see in like a discount bin at a thrift store that you still won't buy even if it was free. And that's what this race is. The race I'm referring to is, of course, a 2015 Indy Grand Prix New Orleans, and from start to finish and months later, this race was an unmitigated disaster. The Southeast hasn't had much in terms of IndyCar venues. Since 1996, the IRL, which is the tadpole form of the current IndyCar series that we all know and love, has raced at 7 Southeast venues, these being Charlotte, Atlanta, Walt Disney World, Homestead, Miami, St. Pete, Barber, and the 7th track is the one we'll be talking about today. In 2014, IndyCar struck a deal with the people in charge of NOLA Motorsports Park in New Orleans, Louisiana, to bring IndyCar back down south. While the deal seemed amazing at first, racing at a track designed by the same person who designed Barber Motorsports Park, a track I believe is one of the best in the US, there were a few drawbacks. Well, when I say a few, there were quite a lot of drawbacks. You see, Barber Motorsports Park was designed as a track for racing. NOLA Motorsports Park was designed as a track for track days and club events, hosting regular cars. I can go into greater detail about why a track designed for track days would not work, but I'll give you the rundown. If you look at the two tracks side by side, you can see that NOLA Motorsports is clearly lacking in facilities, from a lack of buildings, from a lack of suites, and even a lack of grandstands, but the main issue is the runoff area. Now, I'm a stickler for Herman Tilke adding way too much asphalt runoff to most F1 tracks nowadays, but you need to have at least some. If you look at Barber Motorsports Park, it has some. If you look at NOLA, it's not. It's just grass. Now, grass runoff is a really bad thing. I've gone off onto grass runoff at 40 miles an hour, and I've slid probably about 120 feet on really wet grass. Imagine what these guys have to deal with sliding off at 120. Yeah. You can see why this was a problem. Now, in the track's defense, it is very difficult to add drainage. It's very difficult to add asphalt runoff. I understand that's very difficult to do those things. But thinking about rain is something you should do when you have a racetrack in Louisiana, which is one of the states most renowned for a hurricane. They even have a drink at bars in Louisiana called a hurricane. So I think you should probably think about heavy rain and how to deal with it. IndyCar saw the big glamour of hosting a race near one of the biggest cities in the Southeast, saw the money that could bring in. Hell, I could see the money that could bring in. But it won't go to plan. It would actually go to shit. The 2015 IndyCar schedule was revealed on August 27, 2014 at the track where it was confirmed the Indy Grand Prix Louisiana would be the second race of the season right after St. Pete. A test would be conducted in the 2014 style cars where Juan Pablo Montoya, one of the greatest drivers of our generation, would sing his praises about the facility and the track. I mean, if Juan Pablo Montoya is saying it's a good track, should we take his word for it? I think we should. I'd say probably one of the most unfortunate things about this race's history is the fact that they never got a chance to run the track under dry conditions. Yes, they had this test session, but a majority of the race weekend was run under rain. Speaking of the race weekend, we'll get to that now. We'll start with the practice sessions. Overall, these practice sessions were dry, run-of-the-mill practice stuff. Once Saturday came, however, this is when shit would get rocky. One of the main things of note was qualifying, or I should say what should have been qualifying, as it was cancelled due to lightning strikes in the area. The grid was set by the driver's standings in the championship, with Juan Pablo Montoya on pole from his win at St. Pete and Will Power starting in second. Track officials were concerned about a possible flooding issue with the facility. If you look on Google Earth, you can see the track is located very close to a few lakes, creeks, and even man-made canals. This wouldn't be an issue for most tracks, but when your track's located in a state that gets 62 inches of rain yearly, it's gonna be a problem eventually. These problems would be realized on race morning, however, with warm-up right before the command to go green. 24 drivers would have to face 75 laps around the New Orleans track, with 10,000 fucking fans?! What the fuck?! Okay, so that's another problem this track faced right from the very beginning. Marketing in the area was absolutely fucking abysmal. So the race was poorly attended as well. Now, if there's been a worse combination between car, track, promoter, and location of the facility, I'm genuinely curious. If you can name a worse combination of those things, I will send you $10 Monopoly currency. Holy shit, you know what? No. I'm gonna have to see the series. I need to watch this. I've watched it like 5 times already. This was the second IndyCar race I ever watched. But I'm gonna have to relive this shit. No. You know what? I gotta do some shopping first. I gotta mentally and emotionally prepare myself for this. I'll be right back. I gotta get a bottle of Jack Daniels and some painkillers. I'll just be back. Shopping over, we can now finally get into this clusterfuck. Oh boy! The race begins under wet conditions with Juan Pablo Montoya and Will Power making up the front row. We get to turn 2, and Tony Kanaan already tries to do some Tokyo drifting through the grass. Enjoy the green flag run while it lasts, because it's not going to last forever. We had some decent wet weather racing, but a dry line was starting to form, so some drivers were already coming in to pit for some dry tires. Ryan Hunter-Reay and Tony Kanaan were the first coming into pits for some dry tires. A few laps later, however, Tony Kanaan would spin towards the end of the track. While he would get out of the bog, other drivers wouldn't be as fortunate. A lap and a half later, the same would happen, but with Gabby Chavez towards the other end of the track. He would get out of the bog, but in an incident symbolizing his IndyCar career, he would stall on the asphalt. Another funny thing about this incident, besides the nature of the incident as a whole, was this random guy coming out on track to push Gabby Chavez out of the bog. Nobody knew who he was. Neither did Townsend Bell or Paul Tracy for that fact, as they noted on the NBC coverage. Under the first caution, and with an interview with Marty Snyder, Tim Cindric said, and I quote, "This is when the race starts." You know, I have a theory as to why he said this. I believe in one of those massive 2 feet deep puddles in the grass. I believe that an interdimensional portal popped up, and Sim Tindrick came to give this interview. I think Tim Cindric's dead. Or maybe I'm just a raving fucking lunatic and this is all complete bullshit, but I don't know. What would happen from the next restart attempt on would be a level of carnage only seen by people in the grocery store when they see a 6-year-old that didn't get a candy bar they liked. As soon as the green flag came out, the race was back under yellow shortly thereafter as Jack Hawksworth and James Jakes were banished to the Shadow Realm, as in Turn 1, Francesco Dracula was murdered by Elio Castroneves. Now you'd think that botched restart attempt would be pretty bad, and a pretty bad look on the drivers in the series. Well, how about chaos under yellow? Bet you haven't seen that in a while, haven't you? Well, you know, sometimes a lot of good races have that, you know? Lewis Hamilton pitting when the pits were closed in the 2020 Italian Grand Prix. That set up a great race. Romain Grosjean crashing under safety car at Baku. Of course, that's chaos. That's chaos under yellow. But how about the pit crew getting involved? Now that's something you never want to see. Oh yeah, when you thought this race couldn't get any worse, well, it got worse. The previously mentioned Francesco Vampire, that I can't name due to copyright issues, well, his car tried to do a Dale Coincide on pit road, knocking down one of his crew members in one of the weirdest incidents in this decade of IndyCar racing. The crew member escaped with some cuts and some minor injuries, but overall he was okay. While Juan Pablo Montoya was complaining about the standing water still on the track, the clouds above the speedway became darker. After a few more caution laps, a green flag will attempt to come out again. During this restart attempt, Stefano Coletti's car just said, "No," and it promptly spun mid-straight at 110 miles an hour. In the car's attempt to off itself, it ended up only giving itself some rear-end damage. So try again next time. Although Coletti's car was undamaged and kept moving, the caution came out again. After a few more laps under yellow to clean up the debris and Sage Karam being told to keep it clean, the green flag came out to restart the race. And then the yellow flag came out again when Sage Karam binned it into the gravel trap. After another botched restart as Huertas went off, people were starting to get a bit annoyed. I can see why. At this point, I'm starting to get pissed because I had to rewatch this race to write this script. 20 laps. Not a single green flag lap for 20 fucking laps. I feel like I'm watching the 2016 Brazilian Grand Prix again. What the fuck was going on? Can these drivers get their act together? Thankfully for us, the answer was no. And even more thankfully for James Hinchcliffe, who pulled off a god-tier strategy and was saving fuel up at the front. All he needed was a few more cautions and he could bring his car home on fumes. At this point, it was a timed race. The laps didn't give a shit. No one gave a shit. No one had given a shit since lap 12 because they were wrecking all the time. Hopefully they can get their act together. Please. Please. On the next restart, though, a miracle would happen. For the first time in 25 laps and a few rum and cokes under yellow, we finally made a full green flag lap. Fucking finally. They could have run the rest of the race under green. It seemed like they were able to. Hell, they made one lap. First time since like lap 13 that they made a full lap. But a driver had different plans. The camera shot would change, and in the background you could see Chip Ganassi violently sobbing as he entered the porta potty to probably cry himself to sleep as Sage Karam went off for a second time in the race. The caution would be out again. So at this point it was a timed race. There's no way in hell we were going to make it even 10 more minutes. So the drivers knew they had time. Not that much time, but they still had a tiny bit of time left. So of course they were going to be aggressive. So far during this race, it was a majority of the wrecks that were caused by rookies. You know, if you look through the field, James Jakes, Jack Hawksworth, Gabby Chavez, Sage Karam, a lot of these drivers were rookies, so you can't blame them for wrecking under these shit conditions. So how about a little change? How about a little switcheroo? How about we have some veterans eat shit? The green flag would come out for the final time, and they would make it for about, just 3 corners. Yeah, 3. Ryan Hunter-Reay, Sebastian Bourdais, and Simon Pagenaud would have a triangle fuck going into turn 4 and immediately bring the caution out. All 3 cars would be wrecked in the incident. The race was basically over from here. The checkered flag would fly and James Hinchcliffe, through divine miracle, would end up winning the race in what has got to be one of the biggest what the fuck moments in IndyCar history. By the time the end of the race came, you could tell everyone just wanted to get the fuck out of there. The drivers, team members, the 10,000 fans, and even the commentary crew wanted to get out of there. I mean, obviously it's pretty bad when Brian Till and Townsend Bell were talking about a steak and shake burger before the final restart. From sloppy wet weather racing, a guy getting hit on pit road, countless incidents, and about $1 million in damage done, you could see why they wanted to get out, but oh my god, this weekend would get far worse in the following months. Everyone in the IndyCar paddock basically knew as soon as the checkered flag came that they were never going to run a single lap around this track again. To put into context how bad this race is on paper, The average green flag stint was 3.5 laps, which is, a little fucking short. The average speed was 4 miles an hour slower than the first Detroit race that year, which was a complete clusterfuck as well. Yet the race had a purse of $100,000. Where did they get that money from? Well, we will get to that now. I want to first clarify that I am not a legal expert. You can go on a law subreddit somewhere to figure out the full detail about this, but I just want to give the rundown for people that aren't intrigued with lawyers and all that shit. So basically, Andretti Sports Marketing signed a 3-year deal to host the race, and as a result, the state of Louisiana granted the track $4.5 million to host the race. $2.6 million was meant to improve the track, and the rest of the money was to be paid off to Andretti Sports Marketing, or ASM, to compensate Andretti for its services, as well as pay for necessary services related to hosting the race. Instead, the track used $3.4 million to improve the track and shortchanged ASM by pocketing the rest of the money. ASM claimed the track owed them $800,000, which is, not very pleasant. ASM then filed a federal lawsuit against the facility. The track released a statement on it, and the New Orleans Times made an article about it, which echoes a tone of pain. Some great quotes include, "The IndyCar circuit will not be returning to Avondale in 2016, likely making April's Indy Grand Prix of Louisiana a one-and-done affair. Lousy weather wrecked hopes for a smooth inaugural edition. Only 47 laps were completed and the green flag was out for barely half an hour. Attendance was estimated at less than 10,000, far below projections when promoters announced the 3-year plan to run the race at the Avondale track." How this track is still open today, I have no fucking idea, but it is. The track is basically deteriorating, and I don't think it's going to survive the decade, to be honest. Track day events are slowly dwindling. People are starting to realize that the promoters are pieces of shit. Who knows? We'll see what happens. An area where motorsports is deprived really needs a good venue with good people running the race. It just sucks it couldn't happen for New Orleans. From a bad race, awful weather, little to no fan engagement or enjoyment, and shortchanging investors, it's safe to say that this event was a complete catastrophe and easily IndyCar's biggest shit show. Well, hello there. Happy February of 2021. This was originally going to be my first video back, but, delays kept pushing it back and back and back. You can see I'm already 17 minutes into this recording, so yeah, this is a very big video. I wasn't expecting it to be this big, so I was planning to get it out in January. I actually started recording this January 6th, I believe, which is going to be a day in infamy for reasons we won't talk about at the moment. Very cool. So, happy to be back. Hope you enjoyed this video. I sure had fun editing while recording it over the past month. I'm sure I'm going to have fun editing it. Yeah, very cool. So that's going to be it for me. This has been County Line, and I need to hit the road, guys.